George Washington High School Hall of Merit presented last year as Bob Dr. Color Buckter as one of the school's proudest students that went on to create a beautiful niche in San Francisco.
That was color consultant Bob Buckter. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll get to know artists, business owners, poets, and San Franciscans from all walks of life as they tell stories, share personal histories, and try to put into words what makes this city so special. You might not know Bob Buckter by name, but you almost certainly know his work. In this episode, Bob, who has been painting houses and businesses in the city for 50 years, shares stories from his childhood. He's a second-generation San Franciscan, raised in the Excelsior and Outer Sunset districts. Here's Bob.
My father was born in San Francisco in 1910 in the Fillmore. Grew up in the Fillmore, went to Golden Gate School on Golden Gate Avenue, and was adopted. Later on, my brother found out he was half German and half high Scandinavian, called Sami, S-A-M-I, above the Arctic Circle. And my mom was not born in San Francisco, but was born in Stockton, and then the family moved to San Francisco shortly thereafter. Since she was 6 months old.
Oh wow!
She lived, and they moved into North Beach, just east of the entrance to the Broadway Tunnel. She went to high school right there at Gene Parker Elementary School, and her first language was Castellano, Spanish, and she had to learn English at the age of 5.
Yeah.
So later on, they relocated out into the Excelsior district.
Okay.
And she finished growing up out there and met my dad at a dance, and then they got together. 15 years later, I was born.
Okay.
And my father was in World War II, and my father was a milk truck driver. My mom was a bookkeeper for Spreckles Russell Dairy, which is now defunct.
Yeah.
But it was a milk and ice cream company for many years in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so my mother went to high school on Van Ness and about Fell Street.
Oh, where the USD is, right? The school district buildings are over there now. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So that used to be a school.
It used to be called Commerce High School.
Okay.
My uncle, who was born in Spain, became president of Commerce, and then applied to UC Berkeley, and went and got his degree over there, and worked his way through college because my grandparents couldn't afford to do that for him. And then he went into ROTC in the Army, and then became an officer, and then was in World War II, and he got up to full bird colonel by toward the end of the war, and of course he spoke Castellano. That was his first language. Unfortunately, my father said no Spanish in the home. So I had to go out and learn it in high school and a couple of years and a year in college.
Right.
But I've been pursuing the language ever since, and now I'm very good, very fluent at Spanish. And
was your mom Spanish?
She was definitely.
Her family was
Castellano.
Full Castellano.
Full Spanish and Basque combination.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, northern Spain, Bilbao area. And way later in my life, I got interested in rainforest conservation down in Costa Rica. And 25 years ago, I bought up one piece of land, another piece of land. Pretty soon I had 5 pieces altogether, totaling 1,000 acres.
Oh, wow.
And I went to visit a friend of mine down there, and he was a conservationist, and that's what I became. So now I am a rainforest conservationist protector, and I have I have caretakers that I have to pay to keep poachers out from taking animals and trees and all the rest, or whatever other
Right.
things people can grab.
Is this all in Costa Rica?
That's
or?
all in Costa Rica, Central West Coast.
Okay.
Central West Coast, above Quepos, Quepos, which is on the coast. But I'm up above in the mountains, and it's very beautiful. I'm up at about 2,800 feet, and it's it's cool up there. It's about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Down below, it's 90, 95.
Wow.
And it's also humid, though. Mm-hmm. But I also track the rainfall up there, and we get about 400 inches of rain per year, which is one of the wettest spots in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty spectacular with all that weather up there.
Yeah. You, going back just a little bit, you had mentioned your grandparents. I'm not sure if you meant on your mom's side or your dad's side, but I was going to ask if you remember your grandparents.
I never met my grandmother on my mother's side because she passed away in about 1940.
Okay.
I did meet my grandfather, and
he moved to his family to San Francisco. You said from Stockton, right?
The Rodrigo family moved from northern Spain exactly 100 years ago.
Okay.
That was in 1909. Now it's 101 years ago now. Yeah. And took a ship through Ellis Island and migrated out to California. And my grandfather worked in the mines in Central California, and had kind of menial jobs just in order to get food for the family. Mm-hmm. And so I come from a fairly modest labor background. No big money or anything like that.
Do you know what brought your grandfather, I don't know if it was his sole decision, but to move the family from Stockton to San Francisco? Do you have an idea of what that was?
Probably looking for a better job.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And he saved up enough money to buy a house out in the Excelsior, mm-hmm. and that's where my mom grew up.
Okay. And then did you know your grandparents on your dad's side at all?
Never did. He was adopted. I don't know anybody on that side at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not aware of the history of how he came to be in San Francisco? No,
but I think his father could have been born in San Francisco too.
Let's talk a little bit more now about you growing up.
Okay. So my parents met back in about 1932 or 33. They got married in 1934, and they lived in the marina in San Francisco for a while, and then later, actually right around 1934, they had an opportunity to buy a brand new Henry Dolger house out in the Sunset on 29th and Judah.
Okay.
And my grandmother, the adopted mother of my father, loaned my parents enough money to buy the house, which at that time cost $3,500.
Wow.
1934, and so that's where
was that a lot of money then?
So I have a saying: real estate always seems expensive in the present, mm-hmm. but in the future, it always seems cheaper in the past. Mm-hmm. That's my own saying. So
that's just always been the case in San Francisco.
That's always been the case in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I grew up on 29th and Judah, and I went to the local grammar schools, and then I went to George Washington High School in the Richmond district. Mm-hmm. Later on, they awarded me this plaque, George Washington High School Hall of Merit, presented last year as Bob Dr. Culler Buckter as one of the school's proudest students that went on to create a beautiful niche in San Francisco. So I was honored. They induct about 3 people a year.
Wow. Okay.
And I graduated in '64, so that's a while back. But I was nominated, elected, and then now I'm in their Hall of Fame.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you remember, so you said you lived at 29th and Judah, but you went to school. Do you remember how you would get to school?
I used to take streetcars and buses around over into the Richmond district, and a few times I walked across the park. Mm-hmm. But I was
there a streetcar at that time that went through the park and into the?
No,
it was a bus.
Streetcars ran east and west.
Right, like the N Judah.
That's exactly what it was, the N Judah. Yeah. And the buses also went east and west, but they also went north and south, right, starting from Sunset Boulevard all the way out to the Circle at Lake Merced.
Right.
So buses, and then I was there for 3 years. Mm-hmm. Was not a very spectacular student, and later on I thought to myself, if I can't succeed at school, maybe I won't succeed at life.
Right.
And nobody told me any different, so I was kind of depressed.
Yeah.
And I just worked hard at it and got kind of average grades.
Were you interested in architecture and art or anything like that already at that point? Or?
Not at all. The only thing that I liked doing was I played clarinet in the band.
Okay.
And later on I joined the United States Coast Guard Reserves and became part of the marching band. And I was in the Coast Guard from 67 to 73 over the period of the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to go because I had a high enough number that I wouldn't have been drafted, but I had an opportunity to go, so I did.
Okay.
And I hated the service.
Yeah.
I hate being told and directed what to do.
Okay.
And I couldn't. I endured it, and then I waited. I was there for 6 years, and I got my honorable discharge. And also, as far as high school, I went from there. I went to San Francisco City College.
Okay.
For 2 years, got my AA degree, and I transferred over to San Francisco State and finished up with a BA in 1969 in the interdisciplinary studies of social sciences and business. And I was going to see about getting an MBA, and I just burned out. I had enough of school.
Yeah.
And so one day a friend of mine offered me a job as a painter.
And this would have been around 1970?
It was in April of 1970.
April of 70, okay. So
and I went
nearly 50 years ago.
Well, yeah. It's just we're coming up on it very shortly. And I went to work for him. The first job I did, he made money. The second job, he didn't make money off of me. And he said, thank you very much, goodbye.
Any, at that point, specific kind of house or just general?
Well, one of them was an automotive repair shop, interior walls. That was the first job, and the second job was painting a house out in the sunset, the inner sunset. And he didn't tell me how to do it, so I was slow. He didn't like that, and he said, "Hasta la vista, baby."
Wow.
Meanwhile, I asked him how he got his work. He advertised in the San Francisco Progress.
Okay.
So after he discharged me, fired me, I went ahead and put a little college student ad in the Progress, got a couple of jobs. One day I made $35. Wow. And then I got another job, and pretty soon, $50. Wow. And then I needed some help, and one day I made $100, and I couldn't believe it.
Can you give us an idea quickly, like at that time, you said 35, 50, 100, what would be like an average week? Before, for an average.
You work your butt off and get as much done as you possibly can to please the client. And I had one job for 4 days, and I think I made $35 an hour. No, $35 a day, excuse me.
Yeah.
But then I worked my way up. I got some better jobs, and pretty soon I needed somebody to help me, and then I needed somebody else to help me. Meanwhile, my parents allowed me to stay and live at home without paying rent.
There you go.
And I borrowed my father's car and painting tools and ladder to begin with. Then shortly after that, I was able to buy a ladder and buy my own tools and equipment. Then I got a pickup truck, and I had people working for me. And then I I started specializing in historic homes and colorful homes, and developed a name and a reputation in the early 70s as a fine decorator.
That was Bob Buckter. Check back Thursday, when Bob will talk about the work he's done over a half-century, making San Francisco a more beautiful place. He'll also reflect on the changes the city has experienced over the last decade or so. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. You can find us online at storiedsf.com, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If that's Apple Podcasts or iTunes, please do us a favor and rate and review what we do. And if you have any feedback for us, or you just want to say hi, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.